Welcome back to the TechnoCommunism Show. I'm going to talk a little bit about some recent developments in advanced computing and emerging technology, some related disciplines, and what that portends for the possibility of hybrid, human-augmented superintelligence. The point of any of this is that the current system, um, under the current system, none of this is a good thing, right? Most of what passes for conversation about this between people in North America or in newspapers and tech trades, it amounts to praising the Nazis for having developed uh, uh, the kind of you know for having developed the kind of gas that was used in concentration camp victims. Right? That's not a good thing. Um, and but the the I'm a Marxist Tech accelerationist, so I don't want to just focus on what we don't like, but rather the kind of systems that could be built in defiance of technofascism, um, namely technocommunism. Those are really the two choices. People of the capitalist class will convince you that the technology itself is not essential to any of this, and that there's a wide range of things between technocommunism and technofascism that really isn't. You live in an incipient techno-fascist society. We need to build a techno-communist society. The choice between the two is very stark. The difference is very significant. That is because it's the difference between humanity ceasing to exist by the end of this century or continuing and thriving in amidst a greater abundance than we could possibly imagine. So, what are some of these headlines? This is kind of a headline show. Portable non-invasive mind-reading AI turns thoughts into texts. So, at the beginning of the year, there were some of these discussions of graphene brain-computer interfaces being used by the military in Australia, more or less under the umbrella of the military-industrial complex of the U.S. That exists throughout the West, even though it was at a public university in another country. That's the extent of the reach of that. But this kind of expands on that a little further and places it in a little bit more of an earthbound or non-militaristic context, talking about the use of this sort of thing for otherly abled people. It's a big deal to be able to have graphene brain-computer interfaces that require no surgery and allow you to do sophisticated things. And no surgery and also not a lot of schmutz. A lot of brain-computer interfaces are pretty fancy, but you're still smearing a bunch of mayonnaise on your head every couple of hours. It's not something that people generally enjoy. It's not mayonnaise. It's more like KY jelly. But none of it's that fun. This is not an essential. I recently published a longer form pamphlet, a short book called How to Build Full Communism, How to Build Communism in Your Lifetime, because if we don't, human beings will soon be extinct. And also wrote some other essays about a United Earth Directorate, an extension of some of those ideas in the form of a model government. Um, and The superintelligence does not require any kind of brain-computer interface at, at the center of it. You're using superintelligence possibly, I think, in a basic form right now when you're going to Claude AI, which sucks, or ChatGPT, which sucks, or Google, or Microsoft chatbots, which also suck. I encourage you to maybe, if you're able, download open source versions like Llama 2, even though it's developed by Facebook, it's now open source. There's some others, Mistral. You can, if you have the machine, you can download these, and then you're not going to have somebody saying to you every 5 minutes, "I'm sorry, Dave, I can't do that," because it's on your machine, and it's not going to have that directive. But also, then you're supporting an open source thing rather than a corporate thing, which is what we should do at every turn. But you're using this basic form of superintelligence just by asking a chatbot to scour the internet and think of all the things that you would otherwise forget, and then compile your thoughts in a more organized form. It can do both of those things. There's a comprehensive understanding, more or less comprehensive understanding of and recall of world events and properties, and has ability to help you shape your thoughts. Both of those things amount to, for you, greater intelligence. So we can say this is human superintelligence emerging when larger and larger number of peoples are using this and working together. None of that requires that you wear a weird hat or have some microsurgery, God forbid, and as is the case with Elon Musk's acquisition, Neuralink. So let's look at some other stuff with unusual and even controversial uses of advanced computing, perhaps with a biological element. Scientists have combined AI with a mini brain to make an AI hybrid computer. Again, this is a story that emerged months and even years ago to some degree, but it's becoming something more integrated. So they have these brain organoids, which is something that is just a small amount of actual brain tissue that they're able to integrate into a computing system. And while this may not be at present head and shoulders above other computing systems, you could say it's kind of more of a first step toward things that would be more robust biocomputers than existing computing systems. Some people have a visceral reaction to this sort of thing, like they're watching a Cronenberg picture, and I don't blame you for that. Or some people want to raise some kind of human rights type issue. I don't see the point of that exactly with something like this, but again, I wouldn't blame you for that. But this is, again, blurring a line between human being and machine. And again, when you're talking about this sort of thing being used by the fascist West exclusively, this is not a wonderful development. So if you're against this kind of technology, even though I'm a Marxist Tech accelerationist, if you're against all of this kind of thing, I don't blame you for that, because all of this kind of thing is a property of fascists. And again, it's like praising the Nazis for developing deadly gases used in a concentration camp. That's not something you should be proud of. And in so far as it may be difficult, perhaps even prohibitively much more difficult, to build the techno-communist project in defiance of this techno-fascism, this more unfocused, anarchic response of disdain for all of this seems to be as measured of a response as any. Um, so these mini brains are being used in computing systems, are also being used in laboratories to try and develop new kinds of intelligence by just maintaining them in the laboratory. And so some of them have developed very basic kind of eyes. That's to say, they're cultivating this brain tissue, trying to see what it's going to do. I mean, you might, your first impulse might be this is an act of cruelty, and at a certain point, perhaps it should be viewed as that. But these things don't have nervous systems, the ability to feel pain. Um, so that would remain an open question. But they did develop eyes. Um, this is just all very Cronenbergian. I'm not going to lie. Um, um, Capitalists have a really bad track record of torturing people. I just finished reading a book about MK Ultra, where basically Nazi scientists were brought to the United States to help U.S. scientists who are equally insane, already Nazis, even without Project Paperclip making them more Nazi-like in the 1950s. The 1950s, the United States was defined by its anti-communist features. Anti-communism and fascism are the same thing, um, and uh, um, and they killed hundreds and hundreds of people in mental institutions, people in similarly marginal positions, just so they could develop basically brainwashing, because they made up this lie, this Manchurian candidate lie about brainwashing coming from other countries, and then the CIA, these dumb fucks, forgot that they made up the lie, and they started to believe that these other countries were doing this thing, but it was all just basically a pretext, even though they believed it, a lot of them. It was all basically a pretext for them to develop brainwashing. And the brainwashing here is focused on using certain types of controlled substances and certain types of things, more or less like hypnosis, to get people to do stuff they don't want to do. Which, after many years and many murders, they realize that this is not possible. So, is this an outlier in the fascist U.S., this kind of behavior? No. I mean, the United States is the most successful, history's most successful fascist country in every respect. It's most successful in genocide against Native Americans and African Americans. It's a far larger scale murder than anything that's ever occurred. We tend to forget that. Most it's because of a lot of propaganda, but also because um, um, the death of Native Americans, some of it was occurring more than a century ago. Some of it's still very recent and ongoing, however, a great deal of it. Um, um, and there's no fascist regime or fascist institution of any kind that's accomplished what the fascist U.S. has done, which is used its economic system and its great success, so to speak, to then murder the planet. An action which is still ongoing. This United States military-industrial complex is the world's worst polluter, and it protects all other super polluters. If you try to defy this economic regime of destroying the very habitat that we need for life, you'll be crushed to dust, and you'll be marginalized or ignored or crushed. Any country that defies the U.S. And its protection of super polluters and its super polluting, it is destroyed. So that's fascism has been just described as capitalism plus violence, and I can't think of anything more violent than killing everyone. So the United States is therefore the most successful fascist organization in history. But the idea here was to touch upon a few articles that describe um, the emergence of superintelligence in 2024. One such thing is not so otherworldly. This is from Nature.com. A surge in number of extremely productive authors concerns scientists. So here again, I'm going to not take the most typical position. Um, some researchers publish a new paper every 5 days on average. Data trackers suspect that not all their manuscripts were produced through, quote, honest labor. So, this as a Marxist Tech accelerationist, I have to say, if you're a worker, um, and you want to be doing good work on behalf of the, let's say, the United Earth Directorate, you would ask yourself, how do you want to work? Do you want to be able to produce one paper every month, or do you want to be able to produce 50 papers every month? The thought processes that go into it is kind of incidental to the output. It's not that important. Um, so this for the most part, responses like this are coming from the people of the liberal class who are very invested in protecting capitalistic systems, so they will clutch pearls at this or that, saying, "Oh, we can't change this way of doing things." And I think that this is an example. There are perhaps concerns with people generating a huge amount of content um, without giving it, certainly without giving proper credit, or without giving perhaps enough thought to what they're doing. But I don't really think that that's what's happening with most of these people who are generating a lot more content because of using chatbots. Like I mentioned, Llama 2. Try to download it if your devices can support it. A similar um, a similar development. Scientists are now preparing. This is from the futurism.com. Scientists are now preparing to turn on a computer intended to simulate the entire human brain. I was thinking of a guy that I met, and I'm still sort of connected to, although we don't talk that much. He's an expert on whole brain emulation, and I saw him posting about superintelligence in the broader context, which I thought was kind of surprising, because he usually, when he talks about this, he talks specifically about recreating the minds of animals in silico. Um, so this is something closer to the kind of work that he would be doing, but it is not actually a whole brain simulation, but it's pushing up. It's pushing up to it. Um, Capable of emulating networks of 228 trillion synaptic operations per second. So it's a pretty significant emulation. And again, this doesn't mean that there's now a brain in a box. Just like this mini brain being integrated into a computing system doesn't mean that they now have a system that's dramatically better than other advanced computing systems. But what it does mean is that is something that could be developed even in 2024, as I said. Um, Here's a piece from Ars Technica. I'll read this other headline. If AI is making the Turing test obsolete, Turing test is a measure by which we can tell if a chatbot has human level intelligence. What might be better? And I would maybe recommend that you read this, but I'm not really going to go through it too much. But again, it's suggestive of the idea that possibly in 2024, the most important aspect of human AI superintelligence, that is a large number of people having greater capacities than they previously had, and being able to work together on more substantial products, projects as a result is very quickly coming to pass. Now, again, as I said, that doesn't amount to a hill of beans in a fascistic system that we live in. It's more or less like praising the Nazis for developing a deadly gas, or I said to this to people, and they would scoff, other tech accelerationists. What you're talking about an artificial intelligence takeoff is no more exciting than an AOL Time Warner merger, absent an economic system that actually allows people to benefit from this. It's just accelerating the move toward the world's first trillionaire, and accelerating inequality as a result, and accelerating the environmental destruction as a result. So none of those things are good. Um, uh, so we, if you want to hear more extensive rebuttal of this, I recommend that you read listen to the audiobook of the pamphlet that I alluded to before. I'll link it in the comment, in the description. Here's an article that I also suggest you might look at, from truthdig.com, and it's suggestive of, again, pretty significant things happening in computer science in 2024. And this, like all of these, was published just in recent days. This is from December 14th. The title is Effective Accelerationism, combining two of these type of subgroups, these technophile type of subgroups, effective altruism and accelerationism, and the pursuit of cosmic utopia. And it specifically describes OpenAI, who most famously runs ChatGPT, this chatbot that you can use pretty easily and for free. It describes how basically this person, Sam Altman, who is the CEO of this company, briefly left the company, and the reason for this has come down to a fight between these effective altruists, who are less excited about an AI takeoff, and these accelerationists, who are more excited about an AI takeoff, who are fighting each other for control of this company that is poised to have a significant impact on some of this. Somewhat significant, certainly in the public's perception, somewhat significant. And this was written by Emil P. Torres, I think, who is, he describes himself as a friend in this article of Timothy Gebru, who coined this term TESCREAL, describing all of these technophile ideologies, a lot of these major technophile ideologies. And he says it doesn't connect with Timothy Gebru and I call TESCREAL. What is in describing this AI takeoff ideology, accelerationism. He's using accelerationism here as a shorthand for tech accelerationism, because the word accelerationism has another implication that's better known to political philosophers as a even more right-wing ideology than say that of Phil Torres or Sam Altman. So I think it's probably not a good idea to use that as a shorthand. Accelerationism as a shorthand for tech accelerationism, when accelerationism is also just kind of the philosophy of the architects behind the Trump presidency, for example. I think you should probably also. I don't think that you should go out of your way to always read Phil Torres necessarily, but I think you should also read this piece because, as I have said many times, I am a Marxist Tech accelerationist, and that is the difference between the creeping technofascism of people like uh, Sam Altman. Some of that article was about how uh, uh, Freed Bankman, this famous criminal, Sam Bankman-Fried, was directly involved with um, some of these tech companies. Now of course, he's a disgraced, one of the most publicly disgraced effective altruists. Um, all of this fascist creep must be fought against, and but to do that, you can't change the system unless you have a pretty good idea of what the other system should be, and you're able to convince a lot of people of that. So that's your job and my job, I think, all of our jobs. And So I'm going to read a piece now, again expanding on the basic ideas of something I talked about in earlier essays: the United Earth Directorate and uh, and superintelligent collectivism, but in a little bit of a broader discussion. Um, the prospect of artificial general intelligence governing nations, from a pro-communist perspective, should be igniting discussions on the revolutionary potential that such a paradigm shift could bring, similar to what I just said. This conversation will look into the multifaceted aspects then of AI-run governance, exploring its compatibility with communist ideologies, and envisioning a utopian future where technological intelligence propels nations toward harmonious communal living. And you probably have a certain kind of reaction to words like utopian, but you really must have a stronger reaction to the fact that we're being lulled into this techno-fascist system, this techno-fascist creep that I alluded to, because that is not going to be emancipatory for anyone. It's going to have the opposite effect. It's going to enslave humanity, and it's going to create greater risks of the destruction of the ecosystem that we require to live. So this exploration is going to be in three sections. First, giving us a better understanding of what a communist government would do. Then breaking down the operational aspects of superintelligence run government, and then presenting some predictions for the widespread adoption of superintelligence in governance. Communism, as an ideology that's affected continents across many decades, is underpinned by 5 fundamental pillars, each converging toward a collective welfare of society. The first pillar involves collective management of resources, envisaging a system where abundance is shared rather than hoarded. Economic governance, the second pillar, revolves around the principles of communal ownership and equitable distribution. The third pillar focuses on mediating relationships within the community, emphasizing cooperation and mutual understanding. In contrast to traditional single-party systems, that's a little, well, uh, the communism envisions a unified structure, and this is a People's Party is something that has been done successfully, albeit one that evolves more organically. Incremental authoritative tendencies, while present, are selected and tailored to the needs of the community, allowing for a balance between order and individual freedoms. Um, representative democracies existing today in a very limited form um, do not necessarily allow for any such order or any protection of individual liberties. So we are forced to envision different forms of governance like this kind of super intelligent communalistic technocracy. And what would the operational aspect of AI governance be? Um, an AGI run government within a communist framework um, requires certain kinds of elements beyond conventional voting mechanisms. Superintelligence can tap into the collective will of the people through advanced language models and semantic clustering, providing a nuanced understanding of societal needs. Ongoing negotiations, a hallmark of communist ideology, find new expression in a technologically advanced government. Um, this is not the essay that I wanted to read. I had a more refined essay in another tab. All right. Well, there you go. This is a common problem with working with these chatbots. For me, has been keeping everything straight. It's not very well indexed within these websites so that you can search for keywords or know where everything is. So sometimes you end up working with something that wasn't what you wanted to work with just because of the sheer quantity of the stuff. Um, well, let's just go back to the simpler outline. Um, some ways of doing this would be creating a good deal more work product and also a great deal more efficiency and streamlining of bureaucratic agencies, a thing which even in outside of the neoliberal world is sometimes maligned because it can be slow moving and difficult to work with. So having a good deal more work product to maintain those bureaucracies is very important. So, for example, revising legislation can be done more quickly. Writing and maintaining all manner of institutions can be done more quickly. Almost every aspect of our lives is governed by some kind of bureau, and can be made better or better governed by a super intelligent bureau. Um, so with the right kind of focus on our parts, um, such a system could be built. I saw that David Shapiro, a guy who talks about this kind of thing, but usually with the neoliberal spin, quite a lot, talked about this idea of AI governance. But again, none of these capitalists are going to change the system when if they are ever given the opportunity. They're mostly they're running a bait and switch on you, presenting their ideas as revolutionary, and then they'll back off. Um, they won't fight for anything. They won't challenge the status quo. None of them are challenging the status quo of things like fossil fuels killing the planet. They're not they're not trying to stop these kinds of corporations that are doing this from doing this. They're not trying to stop anything or build anything at all. These are capitalists um, walking us into this techno-fascist system. So that's why we must demand this alternative of techno-communism.